Spokane, a city that at first glance seems to be the epitome of tranquility and charm. Nestled in the heart of Washington state, it is a place where the natural beauty of the Pacific Northwest meets the warmth of a close-knit community. A picturesque city nestled in Washington state. The skyline, with its dramatic lighting, paints a picture of serenity and peace. The cityscape at dusk is a sight to behold, with the setting sun casting a golden hue over the buildings, creating an almost magical atmosphere. It boasts a charming exterior. Friendly faces and warm smiles greet you at every corner. The neighborhoods are filled with the sounds of children playing, and the streets are lined with well-kept homes and manicured lawns. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and a sense of community is strong. But beneath the surface, darkness lurks. In the shadows of the alleyways and behind closed doors, there are secrets that are hidden from the public eye. The city, with all its charm, has a darker side that few are aware of. A chill runs down your spine as you walk the streets at night. The once familiar and friendly streets take on an eerie quality. The silence is deafening, and the shadows seem to move with a life of their own. You can feel it. Something is not right. The air is thick with a sense of foreboding, and you can't shake the feeling that you are being watched. This is the Spokane that Courtney Holden knew. A city that, on the surface, seemed perfect, but underneath was filled with darkness and despair. Courtney's life was a reflection of this duality. She lived in a world where appearances were everything, but the reality was far more sinister. A place where secrets festered beneath a veneer of normalcy. The cheerful facades of the houses and the friendly smiles of the neighbors hid the truth. The truth that behind closed doors there were stories of pain, suffering, and unimaginable horrors. The Holden household stood as a testament to this unsettling truth. From the outside, it looked like any other suburban home, but inside, it was a different story. The walls of the house held secrets that were too terrible to imagine. From the outside, it was the picture of suburban tranquility. A well-maintained lawn, a white picket fence, and a swing set in the backyard. It was the kind of house that people dreamed of owning. But for Courtney, it was a prison. A swing set swaying gently in the breeze. It was a symbol of the life that Courtney could have had. A life filled with joy and laughter. But instead, it was a reminder of the life that was taken from her. Neighbors exchanged pleasantries over white picket fences. They talked about the weather, their children, and their plans for the weekend. But no one suspected the horrors that unfolded within those walls. No one knew the truth about what was happening to Courtney. No one suspected the horrors that unfolded within those walls. The normalcy of the neighborhood masked the sinister intentions of those who lived there. The Holdens were respected members of the community, and no one would have guessed the truth about them. Behind closed doors, a young woman named Courtney was trapped in a nightmare. She was a prisoner in her own home, living in constant fear and despair. Her life was a far cry from the happy and carefree existence that she had once known. Her story, like many others, began with such promise. She was a bright, beautiful girl with a future full of possibilities. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for her. Her life took a dark and ominous turn, and she found herself trapped in a situation that she could not escape from. A bright, beautiful girl, full of life and laughter. Courtney was the kind of person who could light up a room with her smile. She had dreams and aspirations, and she was determined to make something of herself. But all of that changed when she was placed in the care of the Holdens. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Courtney's life took a tragic turn, leaving her vulnerable and alone. She was placed in the care of foster parents, the Holdens, who were supposed to provide her with a safe and loving home, but instead they subjected her to a life of misery and torment. Courtney's life took a tragic turn, leaving her vulnerable and alone. She was isolated from the outside world, and she had no one to turn to for help. She was trapped in a nightmare, with no way out. She was placed in the care of foster parents, the Holdens. They appeared to be the perfect family, but behind closed doors, they were anything but. They subjected Courtney to a life of abuse and neglect, and she had no way to escape. They appeared to offer her a safe haven, but little did she know she was walking into a den of despair. The Holdens were not the loving and caring family that they pretended to be. They were monsters who took pleasure in her suffering. Little did she know she was walking into a den of despair. The house that was supposed to be her sanctuary became her prison. She was trapped in a world of pain and suffering, with no way to escape. This is where our story begins. In the heart of Spokane, where a dark secret would soon unravel, leaving an indelible mark on the community. The story of Courtney Holden is one of tragedy and despair, but it is also a story of resilience and hope. In the heart of Spokane, where a dark secret would soon unravel, leaving an indelible mark on the community. The truth about what happened to Courtney would eventually come to light, and the community would be forever changed by the revelations. A story of manipulation, control, and the desperate fight for freedom. Courtney's story is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the will to survive. Despite the horrors that she endured, she never gave up hope. This is the haunting tale of Courtney Holden, a story that will stay with you long after it is over. It is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, and that no matter how dire the situation, there is always a way out. The Holdens were masters of deception. They wore a mask of respectability. Their smiles were warm, their handshakes firm. To the outside world, they were model citizens. No one suspected the sinister truth that lay beneath the surface. They were wolves in sheep's clothing. Their home, a prison disguised as a sanctuary. At the helm was Joshua, Courtney's foster brother. He was a master manipulator. His eyes held a glint of something cold and calculating. A darkness lurked beneath his charming facade. Joshua exerted an iron grip on the household. He controlled every aspect of their lives. His parents, blinded by their own distorted sense of love and loyalty, enabled his behavior. They were under his spell. Fearful of his wrath, they turned a blind eye to his transgressions. Courtney became his prisoner, trapped in a web of manipulation and abuse. She was isolated from the outside world. Her every move was watched, her spirit slowly being crushed. The Holdens were a family built on a foundation of lies. Their secrets ran deep, hidden from the prying eyes of the community. But secrets have a way of surfacing. And when they did, the truth would be far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Courtney's life inside the Holden home was a living nightmare. Her days were filled with a suffocating sense of dread. She was a prisoner in her own home. Joshua, her tormentor, relished in her suffering. He controlled her with an iron fist. Her every move was dictated, her every word scrutinized. She was forbidden from having friends, forbidden from leaving the house alone. Her life was not her own. He chipped away at her spirit, breaking her down piece by piece. He turned her into a shell of her former self. Gone was the vibrant, carefree girl she once was. In her place stood a young woman shrouded in fear and despair. Her eyes, once sparkling with life, now held a haunted look. The weight of her captivity pressed down on her. She yearned for freedom, dreamed of a life beyond the suffocating walls of the Holden home. But escape seemed impossible. Joshua had woven a web of control so tight, so pervasive, that Courtney saw no way out. She was trapped. Her spirit, though battered, refused to be broken completely. Deep down, a flicker of hope remained, a belief that one day she would break free from the clutches of her tormentor. Despite the oppressive darkness that had enveloped her life, Courtney experienced fleeting moments of light. Moments that reminded her of the girl she once was. Moments that fueled her desire to escape the clutches of her captors. She found solace in small acts of defiance, a stolen moment of laughter, a whispered conversation with a sympathetic neighbor. These brief encounters with kindness, though fleeting, gave her strength. She clung to them like a lifeline. They reminded her that there was still good in the world, that she was not alone. One such glimmer of hope arrived in the form of a kind-hearted neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. Mrs. Peterson sensed that something was amiss in the Holden household. She noticed Courtney's withdrawn demeanor, the fear that flickered in her eyes. She reached out to Courtney, offering a warm smile and a listening ear. In those stolen moments, Courtney found a confidant, someone she could share her fears with, someone who believed her. As Courtney clung to those glimmers of hope, a storm was brewing. Joshua, ever vigilant, sensed a shift in her demeanor. He noticed the stolen glances with Mrs. Peterson, the way her eyes seemed to brighten when she thought he wasn't watching. His paranoia grew. He couldn't bear the thought of losing his control over her. He tightened his grip, becoming even more oppressive. He installed security cameras around the house, monitored her phone calls, isolated her further from the outside world. Courtney felt the walls closing in. The air grew thick with tension. Her every move was scrutinized, her every word twisted. Fear gnawed at her insides. She knew she had to escape, but how? Joshua was always one step ahead. His control was absolute. Desperation began to set in. Courtney's dreams of freedom seemed to slip further away with each passing day.